Hi everyone, good afternoon. Let's give our attendees a little bit more time to get online. I know folks are just getting settled behind their desks or computers, and then we'll start in about a minute, okay? Okay, great. Welcome back everyone to our best practice webinar series on Austin Pets Alive's virtual foster program. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Meg Meredith, Grants Manager here at the PEDIGREE Foundation, and I'll also be your host for today's event. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate as an attendee today. I've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. This is pain. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You can also submit chat questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Deb Fair, our Executive Director, to introduce today's panelists from Austin Pets Alive. Deb?
Thank you, Meg. Hey, everyone. I'd love to say thank you again for joining us for a second best practice session for Austin Pets Alive's virtual foster program. APA was the recipient of our first Dogs Rural Grant in 2018. So to share more details from this program, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. First, we have Anne Lafreniere with Austin Pets Alive. She's the Senior Dog Program Manager. Anne has lots of experience in the animal welfare community, and in 2017 joined Austin Pets Alive as the Senior Dog Program Manager. Hillary Aegis is the Virtual Foster Coordinator at APA. Hillary has a passion for animals and joined APA 4.5 years ago. She's been in her current role since March 2019. Anne, let's kick it off with you.
Thanks, Deb. Thank you again to PEDIGREE for supporting this effort and allowing us to share our learnings. We shared a year ago what we had learned in the first few months of this program, and so much has changed over the last year. We knew we couldn't share it all with just one more webinar, so we broke it up into two. The presentation last week was to show our phenomenal growth year over year, how we train our virtual foster volunteers, and the benefits to a shelter implementing a virtual foster program. Today, we talk about the really fun stuff, how to build a community of virtual fosters and how we keep them engaged. And spoiler alert, it's all about making it fun for humans and for dogs. Hillary will give you examples and really get into the core of the program. But I don't want to take any more time. Let's get to it. As a refresher for new people here today, the virtual foster mission is to create volunteer advocates for any dog, but especially long-stay dogs, to serve as a point of contact with internal teams like behavior, team, clinic, matchmakers, and to be first point of contact for potential adopters and help them move through our system. The bottom line, this provides all the benefits a foster would provide, but in a shelter environment. So Hillary, tell us how you build community.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I would be happy to tell you how we build community. I think everybody knows that, of course, our first goal is to try to get as many dogs as we can out of the shelter. And in order to do that, we need a really strong participation from our volunteers. And to create that and to create strong advocates and people who want to continue to work with the dogs, we need to do things that makes it fun for them, and we need to educate them, and we need to keep them inspired. And oftentimes what you'll see in a shelter is a new volunteer coming in who doesn't really know exactly where to put themselves. They see everybody else doing all of the things that they know how to do. And so we want to start by embracing the volunteers, helping them find a dog to advocate for, gives them a sense of where they are and focus when they're there. And then they get to participate in all of the things that the program can offer them, which I really do want to focus on the fun part of this presentation, because the media and the events can be cost-free. They can work for anybody at any location, and it really does give the volunteers the opportunity to participate on all different types of levels. They then get to know the other volunteers in the community, and that gives them a reason to keep coming back. Our mission, of course, is always to just save as many dogs as we can. The building blocks of this program will absolutely contribute to reducing the dog's length of stay. It will increase their adoptability. It always does. And it gives the volunteers the focus they need to reorganize the dog from top to bottom. The events keep the volunteers engaged. It's essential. We make it fun. And we also teach them how to create good media, good marketing presence, and so on and so forth. So let's dive into how we do that. To create an effective program, you really only need the desire and an understanding of key components to build a virtual foster program. And remember, any effort put in is valuable. We really just want to organize our efforts into a strategy that has a proven track record for success. And we want to share with you our most effective ways to build strong advocates, reduce the length of stay of the dogs in shelter, and engage your volunteers. Last week, we covered some of the building blocks, the key building blocks to this program, and I'm going to go over them briefly again. Number one is getting history and information. To be a virtual foster and a good advocate, you really need to have as much information as possible to be able to speak about the dog, to work with it in any areas it might need help, medically, training, time out of kennel, and so on. The second major building blocks to this program is the media presence and how you can improve it. And the third is, what is the best type of home for this dog to be able to make sure that when they finally do land in a home, we are really setting it up for success. And the big component of that is, how do we effectively communicate with adopters and fosters? In this day and age, media is everything. And I think all too often we see profiles for dogs on websites that tend to look alike. And in order for us to be creating a presence, we really need to use some imagination and creativity. And I'm a big believer in fun, because fun and happiness and joy are all contagious emotions. And so when we're able to communicate that, other people tend to start to feel the same way. So we ask our volunteers to really take a look at a dog's public-facing profile, reassess that, and if they don't know how to rebuild or rebrand, we are going to teach them. And some of the things that we do to engage the volunteers and also create great content for the dogs is fun things like media campaigns. So on the next slide, you'll see an example. Are we there? Almost. You can see on, there we go. Okay, thank you. This was a campaign that we started to promote to our dog volunteer page. I want to remind everybody that posting to a dog volunteer page is incredibly important. What it does is give the dog a presence while it's at the shelter. And it kind of gets everyone on board, and seeing that face again and again and again makes everyone who participates in the shelter, whether that's an adoption team, other volunteers, people who might share or participate in, and it creates a groundswell of interest. So as you can see, this particular campaign was Who Wore It Better? So the dog in this picture is a chunky, very chunky, large pit bull type dog. And we started posting images of her with Who Wore It Better campaign type look. And it became really, really popular, and suddenly everybody on the Dogval page started contributing with pictures of dogs that they loved. It gave them something to do. It gave them something fun, but this was also something that was able to be shared on Instagram. It was stuff that we could upload to the website, and just visually, it was dynamic and interesting, and this is that perfect sense of whimsy that I was talking about before. If you can do something that's fun, even if it's one person, it has lots of different applications. So whether you're in a large organization or a small rescue, every effort you make to create something visually compelling for the dog is going to be a step in the right direction. Next slide, please. The dog that you're looking at in this picture is another dog that had been in shelter for several years. She'd been through a bunch of different shelters, in fact. And if you were here last week, you may remember me talking about Lana the chubby rabbit. Well, this, in fact, is Lana the chubby rabbit. And she's a very chubby girl. This is Lana is on the right, and another pit bull type dog on the other side. But this was just one of several different images that we used to start to bring these dogs out into the forefront for everyone, and it inspired everyone else to participate. Again, this is a free, easy, much more interesting than a typical bio image that everybody had a chance to share in, and it was really fun. And we had a number of participants, and I can't share them all with you, but I assure you it's the kind of thing that just creates this tidal wave of interest that people want to do, because it's enjoyable and the dogs look really, really cute, and it's colorful, and it has all of the things that start to create a different type of content. And speaking of content, if we can go to the next slide. It is super important to keep awareness around our dogs. And part of the goal of creating great media is to have an opportunity. I almost look at it as an excuse to continually spam the world with their faces. So we take the same dog again and again and again because it's a dog that every volunteer is working with a particular dog, or a team is working on a particular dog. But somehow when you add just a little bit of color or some text or props, you have, without any cost, a great campaign. So these were dogs that we dressed up in Easter Bunny ears. The picture up on the right that says, Haley says, please fix my ears, is actually a very easy thing to create, and something you can do in Instagram, something you can do in, I think, Photoshop, but Instagram is really the easiest place to create these types of stories. And adding text is important because it allows you to create a voice for the dog. And somehow when you're creating the voice for the dog, all of the things that you love about them become what everybody else sees them as. And a dog who doesn't have a voice, who is often overlooked, really needs that new conceptual approach, something sweet and engaging to be able to have the rest of the world see the dog the way that we do. Next slide, please. Again, this is obviously one of my favorite dogs, and so I used her again and again. But I determined that I was going to make Lana the chubby rabbit. And so that became her brand. And truly, you can do this with any dog. But part of the reason that I really wanted to do this for her is because she came back to us really, really overweight. She was close to 90 pounds and she is a small lowrider dog. And I was hearing people talking about her and how much weight she'd gained and all of that. And I really wanted to switch the perception of who she was into something adorable. And so every time I shared an image of her or information about her, I would refer to her as the chubby rabbit. Her Instagram account is called Lana the Chubby Rabbit. She's got a ton of followers, and pretty much anyone on property who's talking about Lana is not using her real name. They are calling her Lana the Chubby Rabbit. And so I strongly encourage everybody to start to create a brand identity for your dog. It is no different than advertising or marketing. Brand identity is really creating a persona for an animal that will convey itself through everything that you share it on. So our dogs all have these images that can be uploaded to their profiles. It's something that is really easy to see when people go to their bios. And once they land on these gallery of images, it immediately softens the presence of the dog, adds something that's sweet and funny, and it draws an audience right in. And I can tell you that shortly after creating these images and adding them to her profile, she got a ton of inquiries. And that's what we want. We want an audience to be engaged. And the other thing is that once an audience is engaged, it's super important to recognize when your marketing is going well. If the people that you're posting to are talking back to you, you're doing it right. Marketing 101, if they're talking to you, it's working. Next up. So the dog in this image is a dog named Tonka. He is a white, blocky-headed dog that had been with us again for several years, in and out of homes. And I think that everybody just got used to Tonka going home and coming back and going home and coming back. And so he really needed a facelift. And so we did a photo shoot for him. And instead of him putting out there as the strapping boy that he is, and all the media that he's always had kind of was that way, we scrapped the whole thing and started again. And we slapped on a pair of pretty pink wings on him and named him Tinkerbell, like Tinkerbell. But it was adorable. And it's totally changed the persona for him. It softened his image. It just added a sweetness to him, and we put that up on his bio and his media on social media platforms, shared that with all the volunteers. The volunteers started calling him Tinkerbell, and P.S. Tonka walked out that front door and has not come back 2 weeks later, so that was a win. Let's go to the black dogs. I think, excuse me, every shelter knows that a senior black dog is a hard dog to place. And shooting, taking images of a black dog can also be a challenge. They're not easy to light. They tend to kind of get lost in the mix of things. And Noki is the girl that you're looking at in this picture. One of my all-time favorite dogs, but an important dog to use as an illustration for people who are trying to create a different look for the dogs that they have in the shelter. We really decided her virtual foster has been her advocate for quite some time. She's had tons of photo shoots. They just all ended up looking very similar to one another, and we needed something that was going to be really, really different. So we decided to go for really moody lighting. And I put out a blast on, everybody should have this. I want to just remind everyone that doing all of this does not require recruiting professional photographers. Doing this was as easy as putting out a blast on nextdoor.com, which is a community-based website. It is a neighborhood website, and you can go onto that platform and ask for help. And I did. I asked for lighting equipment, I asked for backdrops, I asked for photographers, and we were lucky enough to get several people who not only donated equipment, but came and took pictures for us. And the image that you're looking at is one of Noki holding hands with her bestie under a sky that was about to pour. And, you know, interestingly enough, it was one of a series of images that we created for the Black dogs in the shelter, all of whom walked out the front door within weeks of this photo campaign. And while I can't tell you that I'm sure that it's exactly how it looks on the website, or it's that the volunteers in the community start to see these dogs in a different way, the pictures are compelling. The feeling of them is very real. It shows a relationship between Noki and the person that loves her, and that will always work. And I guess I'm just suggesting that in an effort to build advocacy around a dog, that you do things that haven't been done before. It's really good to take a chance. There's nothing that you can do as long as it's, you know, obviously appropriate imaging and speaks from the heart, that won't add something to the dog and the way that people perceive it. And Noki in this image, and clearly very much loved, was a very authentic and compelling image for people to see. Next slide, please. More of our Black dog campaigns. This is Mercedes, another blocky-headed Black dog. Mercedes wasn't a senior, she was certainly a Spitfire. She had a lot of attention for quite some time, and then she became a part of the population that was not overlooked, but just not getting the fresh identity that she needed. And so putting her in a home on a sleepover and putting on a pair of pajamas was exactly what it took. And I do need to share the story of Mercedes, because it took all of 10 days to focus in on Mercedes, change everything about her public-facing profile, and have her walk out the front door. And not only did she walk out the front door, but there was a line of people interested in her, and she left on New Year's Day. So it was a very moving experience for all of us to see how easy it was to change her persona by just, I mean, I'm not a believer that every dog needs to be in a tutu, but if you've got a dog that's getting no traction, do something fun, build it. People will feel it if you do it and you do it well. And it takes very little effort. It was just a matter of switching it up a little bit, adding a bunch of new images to her profile page on the website, sharing her face everywhere on social media. Hashtags are very, very important when you're working on social media campaigns, and they're pretty easy to learn about. You can just Google a hashtag for, you know, best hashtags for dogs and find them. I'm also happy to share them if anybody would like to find out from me directly. But that was all it took for her. And her images were so compelling that she got adopted and has not come back, which was quite wonderful. Next slide, please. Part of what's really important in keeping our volunteers involved is what happens after that dog goes home. So that you've taken all of this time and all of this energy and put all of your love into a dog, and they finally walk out the front door, which is an absolute win for the dog and an absolute win for the volunteer. But from the virtual foster program perspective, we want them, those volunteers, to step up right away for another dog or two or three, or to build a team around another dog, and to take all of the skills that they've learned in communicating and media and marketing and training, and pour that right back into being a really savvy advocate for another animal. And so we want them to start to look at another dog, and we come right out and ask them to look for the dogs that have been in shelter the longest or don't have any friends. And we find that when we start to engage them in that way and offer up more challenge, that they rise to it. It's inspiring for them to do more for the dogs. And once they get the hang of the program, they feel very comfortable in it, and it's important for them to feel like they're challenged as well. So this continues to keep the volunteer community that are participating in the program engaged, and we want to support those people on any and all levels. We want to be able to give them workshops to talk about how we communicate with adopters. We have done podcasts with volunteers who have sent a lot of dogs home, who have experience that can share that experience and help our volunteers find their own voice. And the adjusting marketing part is something that we continue to work on and build teams of people who can do things for the dogs that don't all have to do the same thing. So even if it's a group of people working on a dog, we will then build the team identity and show what all of these people are doing for one animal in particular. We throw events that are low cost and very easy to gather and engage volunteers and new people and people wanting to learn about the program who aren't even advocating at that point, and start to give them a reason to participate. Next slide, please. Really important to remember that, as I said earlier, that speaking to the other people in the community is a valuable tool for creating an identity and interest in the dog that you want to promote. This is a picture of Daisy Duke, and the quote reads, "When your bio says you're all about jean shorts and plaid, or a gingham if you're in a pinch, Daisy Duke," and it lists her kennel number. This is what the volunteer advocate did for her, and you know, it's adorable. And she posted this to the dog volunteer page, and it got a tremendous amount of interest. And suddenly there was a big conversation going on amongst the volunteers. Who is this dog, Daisy Duke? Oh my goodness, she's so adorable. How did I miss her? I'm gonna go take her out tomorrow. When those conversations start to happen, the people on staff also see that, and they start to become aware of who Daisy Duke is and how adorable she is in her gingham and her shorts. And somebody coming in and asking for a dog or inquiring about a dog, if that dog is in someone's head, it's more likely that that name is going to come out of their mouths. And so internal communication between one another and in the community is really, really important. The other thing I want to remind everyone of is how valuable it is to show up with joy. You really want to present to your community as somebody that's happy being there, that wants to do all of the things. Never be afraid to ask for help. Ask for help with training, ask for help with media, ask people outside the shelter community to come in and help you take pictures. The more you help, the more people will rise to it and participate with you. So again, all of these things are things that you can do at little to no cost and build your community and awareness around the dogs. And an example of that, next slide, please. This was our one of many events that we are doing and continue to do. This was the Hearts Festival. And so for Valentine's Day, we got a very inexpensive piece of faux lattice fencing from Home Depot. I think it cost $7, and everyone chipped in to buy large red Mylar heart balloons, and we attached them with ribbon to the wall. And there were so many people that showed up to build this wall. The woman you see on the ground attaching the balloons is one of our volunteers who does a lot of our videos and photos, and she's a devoted person who's been here for a long time. But there was something about this project, I think it was one of the first events that we did, that just made everybody want to come. People came with their children, they showed up with breakfast for everyone. They all were participants in it. And it was bright and vibrant, and the dogs sat on a little platform in front of the hearts, and the photos were absolutely gorgeous. If we can go to the next slide, you'll see those. Here are all of our beautiful dogs at the Valentine's Wall of Hearts. Some of the volunteers created bandanas for them with hearts on them. And the thing that I just loved about this was we ended up with somewhere between 50 to 60 dogs that came out and participated in this program. And all the volunteers came to help. They were so excited and full of joy at seeing the dogs have something fun to do that was different than a training session, or different than just a walk, or different than being in the yard. It was something that everybody could be a part of. The dogs were happy, and they all got individual images that they were able to use across many different platforms. So I hope that you can see, just from this kind of image alone, even from the Who Wore Better campaign, the one thing you never want to do, if you can avoid it, is to just take pictures of dogs in kennels or in dirt yards. It's really important to use just a little bit of color and find some kind of reason to be able to create images that have a little bit more. You are competing with other animals out there that are looking for attention, and this is a really, really easy way to do it. And as far as the people that can create the media for you, again, this was all volunteer-based, whether it was from Austin Pets Alive volunteers or people in our community in Austin who participated, but everybody had a blast. And the dogs look at them, they look absolutely beautiful. And every one of the dogs in these pictures were long-stay dogs, and I'm very happy to say that not one of them is in the shelter any longer. Okay, can we change slides to Weave-a-thon, please? All right, well, we're queuing up. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. This was such a magical afternoon, and we had such a good time with it. It was such an easy thing to do, and fortunately, I I'm not smart enough to be able to tell you how she did it, but one of our volunteers created this blooper reel for us from the Weave-a-thon event. And Weave is something that's a part of an agility course and usually takes place in a dirt yard. But in this particular case, we wrapped the weaving poles around with very brightly colored duct tape and got all of the dogs outside, and the imperfection of it is what was so incredible about it. And what I love about it in particular is how ridiculous the dogs look. They're just adorable, and that's okay. They don't have to be presented as perfection. They need to be looking as though they're dogs that could be owned. And I think we really, not only did we have a really great time and tremendous participation, but it was something to share with everyone that really, really enjoyed it and was kind of the launching pad for the other campaigns that we did. And I believe that just doing that first one kind of showed everybody how easy it was to have a good time with the dogs, how easy it was to create a sense of community and great marketing images. And that was what was springboarding us into doing more and more events. And they just got better as they went along. They're super easy to do. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I want to stress how important it is for all of us to really sing out the success stories that we have. There is no question but that the role of a virtual foster is one that is filled with a lot of heart, a lot of emotion, a lot of work. And so when something of value happens and you see that it's working, and it's always works, that's part of what I love about this program so much, was being able to have a formula that time and time again really was able to move a dog from their kennel into a home. But when those things happen, you want to just shout it from the rooftops and really share again and again all of the success stories, because it keeps people believing that they can do it. And so the longer the stay dog, the harder that dog is to place, the more you really want to build on the successes that you have and inspire your community of volunteers or participants, whether you're a rescue or a larger shelter or a smaller shelter or an individual who's an advocate. These are really things that you want to make sure people understand, that when it's done in a certain way, that it's effective and it can work. And so this particular slide is now in California. He was one of our very naughty nuggets, and so we did what's called a negative marketing campaign for him. And we were lucky enough to have him taken in by someone. And this is a picture of two of the volunteers, one staff, one volunteer, at the airport in their COVID masks, sending him off to his new home. Okay, let's change slides. Remember, for anybody who's part of a larger organization, all of these things are things that you can do to help ease the burden on some of your teams. It is a very cohesive approach to being able to build an advocacy program, having someone who's a point person to help volunteers, streamlining the way that you communicate. For smaller rescues, anything that you can do to organize information and build a new identity for the dog will be invaluable for you. Remember to revise your media content. Remember to try to learn how to change the way that you speak to adopters to communicate in a way that they understand what the true nature of a dog is, place them for success, give people context, and that helps tremendously with the placement of the dog. Next slide, please. We really, really want to thank Pedigree so much for enabling us to build this incredible program and to share it with everyone else. And we hope that you will be able to do the same. This will engage your volunteer community. It will build strength amongst your participants as handlers, as advocates, and it will absolutely increase the potential for your dogs to leave the shelter. It has changed the way we market our dogs. It enables us to teach new people in the community and save more lives. And that's what this is all about. So I hope this has been helpful to everyone. Feel free to ask questions as we conclude the program. If you want to go to the poll, Meg, is that what's up next?
Hillary, yes. So what we'll do now is we're going to go to 3 separate polls. And then we'll be answering questions, the questions submitted during today's presentation. So don't forget, you can go down to that questions pane and open it up and then type in your questions for Hillary or Ann, and we'll get those answered for you. So let's do this first poll. Let me launch it here. Okay, and the question is, what part of the virtual foster program resonates with you the most? Okay, please select the appropriate response and then click submit. I'll give you about 20 more seconds. Okay, perfect. So let me close this up and I'm going to share the poll results. So you can see 50% agree reducing long stay and 40% marketing the dogs from a personal point of view. It's interesting. So let's do poll number 2. What do you see as your largest obstacle to launching a virtual foster program in your shelter? Okay, again, please just select the appropriate response and click submit. So maybe you don't see that you've got the resources or you don't feel like you have the resources for it. Maybe you're wondering, how do we get more volunteers? And do I know any volunteers that know anything about social media? I'll give you about 20 more seconds if you'll finish up. So, and the choices are staff resources, management, and lack of willing volunteers. Okay, perfect. I'm going to close this one up and share those with you. So 22% say staff resources, 33% say management, and then 44% say lack of willing volunteers. Okay, and our last poll. Now, would having a virtual foster guidebook or maybe toolkit be important in deciding to start a virtual foster program? So that would be something that Hillary would create for us that would kind of give you a booklet or a toolkit to look at, and helping you kind of figure out what the next steps are. So if you'll just answer yes or no and click submit. I'm still waiting on a few of you. Okay, perfect. I'm going to close this up. And we were pretty unanimous. Most of us said, or all of us said, 100% would be helpful in providing for us to provide some type of toolkit or guidebook for you to be able to implement this program. And now I think what we're going to do is go back to the questions portion of our session. And I want to go ahead and start right away. How do you think this program could be best utilized and tweaked to suit a foster-based rescue, no physical shelter location? So Hillary, I'll let you take that one.
I didn't understand was the word tweet? Can you just read it to me one more time? I couldn't understand.
How do you think this program could be best utilized and or tweaked to suit?
Oh, tweet.
Yeah, tweaked, sorry, to suit a foster-based rescue, so no physical shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything that creates a strong brand identity for the dogs is going to be a potent change for anyone, whether you have a physical shelter or not. And I would strongly encourage the use of visual presentation on multiple platforms and being able to understand how to use hashtags to draw in viewers. I have literally placed dogs in the past just by using the hashtag Brindle Pitbull. I actually had somebody come 3 hours to meet a dog because of that, not even in my city. So you would be amazed at what you create in the groundswell for a media platform and the way that if you can change the visual presence of a dog when people see it, whether it's on a website or your own personal Facebook page, a big part of this presentation is to show you how dramatically you can change what people see when they look at this dog that separates them from others. And that is not part of being part of a shelter. That is just really focusing in on the dog and finding a way to convey what it is that you love about that animal, find a way to talk about what is special, what sets them apart, what kind of home they need, why you love it. Put it in something funny one day, put it in something, different the next. If you can create a gallery of images and just be consistently keeping that dog's face in front of people, you will increase the chances of an interested adopter finding them. And stick with it. It doesn't happen overnight. These are our success stories, but there are other dogs that we have worked with for months to place them, but it always works. So that would be my first recommend.
Meg, this is Ann. I would like to also add on to what Hillary just said. I think that you can build community with your foster homes, right? They are volunteers. And so I think a lot of the ways that we engage volunteers can be used with fosters. So I would just take as many pieces of this as seem appropriate and use it in the foster world.
Hey, Ann and Hillary, it's Deb Fair. It was interesting seeing the polling because it looks like volunteers seems to be one of the challenges that came up in the polling. So question for you guys, how do you market for new volunteers? I think that might be helpful to the group here that's listening to you today.
That's a really good question. So as I said last week, there were not that many participants when I started in this position, when we created this new incarnation of the program. And one of the things that I was saying earlier is exactly how this program was built, by asking. We just ask for help. And a lot of times people don't know what something is. And if you don't really tell them, they're less inclined to participate. And that is how we built this volunteer population in the program, was literally just saying, can you help? There's a dog that needs your help. Can you help? No one ever says no. So if you have a volunteer population, if you are at a shelter, that's part of that. Keep a positive, upbeat attitude that wants to engage and encourage everyone to participate in something that is going to save lives. People don't say no. Even if you offer them the ability to participate as part of a team, or you introduce people to one another, once they're in, they're there for you. They're there for the dogs, really. I mean, that's why anyone's involved in a shelter. I think it's just a matter of opening up those dialogues. I mean, personally, I have been known to stand in the parking lot and not let people leave until they said yes, but that's a unique style to me. But behind all of that is truly just not being afraid to ask for people to participate on any level.
And here's the question that we just got in. Would you be willing to talk to us one-on-one? When do you anticipate your virtual foster program manual will be available?
I speak to people one-on-one all the time, and part of what we all want to do is to be able to share whatever we know and find a way to make it an application that can work for everybody else, so everyone can be saving the dogs in shelter. And yes, of course, we are here to help in any way that we can. And as far as the rollout for the manual, it is in the works already. It's just kind of gotten a COVID delay. And I'm trying to make sure that it's got the application in the world we live in now. But yes, that should be forthcoming in the next few months. That's my hope.
Perfect. Thanks, Hillary. Deb, you have a couple more questions for us?
Well, I'm just wondering, I know that what we're seeing here at PEDIGREE Foundation is a lot of data as far as COVID-19, when this all happened, the fact that shelters and rescues, and I've heard this through American Pets Alive data, as well as HOS, Human Animal Social Services, HSUS, that people really rose to the challenge to come in and help foster dogs and take them out of shelters. So I'm wondering, you know, how you guys would approach that, because I think that's an opportunity when you think, oh gee, I don't have any volunteers. How would you guys approach that to continue to maintain that relationship so they could potentially become virtual fosters?
Hey, Hillary, can I take this one?
Please.
So part of, you mentioned the human animal services model, and in that model, the most challenging dogs will continue to be in a shelter, at least temporarily, in a urgent situation, which makes the virtual fosters even more important. So we have handled it where our volunteer teams come in shifts, so we don't have the mass amount of people there all at one time. But the dogs are still getting their outings, and sometimes they'll have a person on each shift. So they're actually continuing to still get the amount of attention that they did before. We have a smaller number of dogs on site, which has been a wonderful benefit for the dogs that remain, that they are then encircled with this community of people, and events are happening to them, and now they're getting 3 and 4 outings a day. So it's really been nothing but a blessing for us at Austin Pets Alive to have this opportunity to really focus on building this group of very vital virtual fosters, and they have not let us down. The program has continued to grow, as our foster program has as well. So it's just really been a great experience all the way around, and I would encourage people to find that silver lining in all of this. How can you take some volunteers that maybe didn't feel they were needed before and make them feel very valued in this environment?
So question for you guys, this is something that I always think about. It's Deb again, social media. So I know a lot of, and you know, Hillary, you've got this creative marketing background, so you know, encouraging people to look for those photos, those creative opportunities to tell a particular dog's story is essential to this program. would you recommend monitoring of what the fosters are putting out there? Because I know that there's always, guidelines that I would suspect you would provide. Everybody hears the do's and don'ts, right, of what you should and could post. But on the monitoring side, I know that a question has come up as far as, do you monitor that as far as what the virtual fosters post? Is there some type of training session that you offer? To some people, social media comes naturally. To some, it might be a little bit more of a challenge.
Yes, social media does not come naturally to an awful lot of people, which is why this was such an interesting thing to watch. So when we started this program, none of the dogs, not none, maybe 4 or 5 had social media accounts. We have a virtual foster Facebook page, which is only for the virtual fosters. And we did sessions with people to just explain to them how that works. And, a lot of people who are part of the program who didn't grow up in this current age of media that we live in were very, very intimidated by the idea of using Instagram. It seemed like, it's like my father. He's like, I don't even know how to use a computer. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. But when they understood that they could use media as a voice, they were interested. And when you have interest, that's really all you need. It's not hard to teach someone how to do this. But in terms of monitoring, any dog that's put out there in the public eye has the dogs linked to their bio on our website so that they're always circling back to Austin Pets Alive. And because we have this virtual foster Facebook page, there is a file that has a list of all the accounts. And so one of the things that happens in an onboarding process of a new volunteer is that they go through the files that are very easy for them to access there, and they see a list of the other accounts and they add their account, and then all of the accounts follow each other. So it's kind of like a built-in monitoring system. It's not, I have never seen anything inappropriate or something questionable. The only thing that I've ever really participated in is when someone feels like they're out of ideas or, wants a refresh, but it's not, they haven't really needed those kind of guidelines because the way that they're learning is from other people. And so it automatically follows that sort of format.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I know that we have a group of volunteers as well that are our PEDIGREE Foundation ambassadors. And so we have monthly check-ins with them, calls with them, but we also create an opportunity for them to learn more about what they should post, could post, and how it can feel more authentic to them as well. So we definitely have some training that we offer here on the PEDIGREE Foundation side. I have one last question for y'all. So I think you touched on it. You said something about, staying in the parking lot, until somebody agrees to foster. Question for you is, how do you convince a foster or find that perfect match to take on those dogs that really need that virtual foster assistance? How do you go about doing that? What's the process?
Are you referring to the dogs that are in foster homes?
No. How do you get the virtual fosters to really take on the dogs that need it the most?
Oh, the virtual fosters. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
I think one of the things that I think is never going to be a fail is if people see that you are invested and it matters to you, you set that kind of an example. And so, I have a very full work week at Austin Pets Alive, but I am still a volunteer. And so when I'm out there and I'm working with the dogs, if I approach a volunteer and say, I need your help, they're always willing to listen. It's not as if it's a mandate or it's something that's coming from someone who isn't boots on the ground. That's part of what felt very important in building this program, was really to be a voice for the volunteers and to see what they were going through and what was happening in their world on property. And so there's a very active engagement from that perspective from staff to volunteers. And when there is a dog that's in need, I am going to go to people who have experience with this, who have done this time and time again, and offer them all of the tools that we have to help build that dog's persona again, or refresh their understanding of who the dog is and where they're failing. Like, what are their weak links? Is this dog a dog who has severe separation anxiety? There's absolutely the need for crate training. We have to make that a part of what we do for this animal. And it becomes a group effort. And that way it doesn't feel like it's a burden to anybody. They really feel like they are part of a team that is pointed at success for the dog. And to this date, I have not had someone say no. So I think that, you know, just being engaged with the volunteer community that way, they're happy to help just by being there and being a part of things with them.
That's right. And so just to wrap things up, what I want to note is all of our emails here on the bottom of this slide. And if you'd like a copy of, I'm going to send the recording out tomorrow, but if you want a copy of the actual presentations, both from part 1 and from part 2, send me, Megan Meredith, an email, and I'll send you those presentations so that you can review those on your own time. And then, of course, I think Anne, Hillary, Deb, and myself would just all say thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. And we hope that you're interested in this program. And finally, a big thank you to Hillary and Anne for just sharing and helping us learn. We're all in the same boat and want to get those pets adopted into loving homes. Thanks so much again for your time today, and we'll see you next time.